Now today we're replacing the upper and lower radiator hose, thermostat, 2010 Impreza, 174,000 miles. So of course the engine is nice and cool. Right here is the radiator cap. Let's remove it. This allows the coolant to drain a little bit quicker when we open up the drain plug. So I've already jacked up the vehicle, placed it on jack stands right smack in the middle, right behind the oil pan. Terrific spot to jack up your vehicle from. And then finding the radiator, just follow the lower radiator hose. And on the passenger side, this is a northeastern vehicle, you can tell by the rust. But right here, you have a little drain, so just remove it. Now I did replace the coolant roughly 40,000 miles ago when we replaced the head gasket. So good time to replace it, the summer is here. Fresh coolant and fresh hoses. Now as the coolant drains, we can go ahead and remove the upper radiator hose. Fortunately, working on these Subarus, quite easy, nothing like that silly Audi where just to replace drive belts you have to remove the front bumper. This is drastically easier. And now looking straight down, we have the lower radiator hose. Right here is a clamp, I can easily get access to it. This is the elbow where the thermostat lives. So this is the one we just loosened, and then right here. Of course, great time to replace these hose clamps. Now before we remove that lower radiator hose, I'm just reinstalling the drain plug. And no need to over torque it, just make sure it's nice and tight. We'll pressure check everything before we turn on the vehicle. So we have the upper and lower radiator hose removed, and now we have the thermostat cover, which is held on by two 10mm fasteners. Okay. Now this should break loose. There we go. And this is the thermostat, just using a plastic trim removal tool. As always, I'll link the tools in the description box below. In other words, I don't want to use a flathead screwdriver because this is aluminum and you don't want to scratch up the surface. So this little plastic piece works. And there we go, yikes. Now this is the original thermostat cover, and you can see we have some old coolant just burnt on here. So you want to clean this off with a wire brush. You want a nice clean surface, and where the cover meets up with the water pump, 180 grit sanding block, nice and clean. So here's our new thermostat. Make sure you have a new gasket as well. They typically come, the gaskets usually come with the thermostat, and then you have a pin here. Make sure the pin is pointing up. And if you're curious if Subarus are good vehicles, again, northeastern vehicle, 174,000 miles, nothing is leaking. No transmission fluid, no oil, everything is nice and dry. The only really Achilles heel with this vehicle are the head gaskets, but other than that, really very reliable. And then we have the cover. Do not over torque these fasteners, okay? They're only roughly 9 foot-pounds from the factory. You do not want to snap any of these fasteners. And once again, because the clamps were so rusty and really just worn out, brand new clamps. You can always pick up a kit like this very inexpensively. Now when you start reinstalling the hosing, make sure you have the clamps where you want them to point when it comes time to fastening them down. So in other words, I know, or I want, to tighten this hose clamp from up top, like before, and then this one, we can do something like this. Okay. Okay, we're almost done, and then we can pressure check the system. Now don't forget the neck of the radiator, upper and lower, is plastic, so don't over tighten these hose clamps. And lastly, I want to clean out the overflow bottle. Right here is a clip where my index finger is. Just press in the clip. Okay, so right here, pressing the clip, this comes right out. Remove the hose here. Now to add the new coolant, I'm using a spill-free funnel. Not necessary, just makes the job a lot easier. Also, it allows all of the air bubbles to be removed when we start the vehicle, and you'll see what I mean in a moment. Number 2, if you want to use Subaru coolant, go right ahead. I've been using Prestone for years on all my vehicles, never ever had an issue. And lastly, before we start the vehicle, I want to pressure test the system. This is so we can locate any leaks rather than start the vehicle and track everything down. So this makes the job, again, you're double checking the work essentially. Well, it looks like I can't get enough pressure because the adapter's a little too big. I can get up to 7 and then I can't get anything beyond that. So unfortunately, we can't triple check everything, so let's just start it up and see if we have any leaks. So now we're ready to start the vehicle and bleed the coolant system. 2 ways to do this. This is by far the easiest way with the spill-free funnel. I have some coolant in here, and as the vehicle runs, you'll see air bubbles escape from the system, and then it will bleed on its own. The other option is you don't have to use this, but it's a little bit more involved. And if you want to see that, I'll link the timing belt replacement video, and toward the end you see exactly how I bleed the system without the funnel. But this is a big time saver. So now the vehicle is warming up, we can check for leaks, and you'll see air bubbles escape from the system, and this is simply bleeding the coolant system. And as you can see, there is some smoke. That is the coolant that spilled on the exhaust system. So make sure, if you're doing this in the garage, make sure the garage door is open because it's going to be a little smelly. Now, because the Subaru does not have a temp gauge, I just want to keep an eye on the temperature. The thermostat opens at roughly 80 degrees Celsius. So on a scan tool, I can quickly do a data stream. Engine coolant temperature. So we're at 79°C, so the thermostat should be opening just about now. The only thing I'm waiting for are the cooling fans to turn on, and then that's pretty much at peak operating temperature. But so far so good. We don't have any leaks whatsoever. So we've been at a constant 88 to 89 degrees Celsius, no issues whatsoever, no leaks. Everything looks good on the dash. So here we are a few hours later. The engine is nice and cool. You don't want to remove the radiator cap or the funnel if the engine is hot. So now we can remove this. We can remove the adapter. And the one thing I forgot to mention, make sure you add some coolant in the overflow bottle. Okay. Reinstall the radiator cap. And that's it. We're all done. And as always, thank you for watching.